All right, let's dive in. We live in a world that is just getting more and more automated, right? But today, we're going to talk about the one thing that's surprisingly more critical than ever. People. Let's get into it.
You know the feeling, right? You're fighting with an automated checkout machine, or you're stuck in some endless customer service phone loop. Technology is supposed to make our lives easier, but the reality, well, it can get a little messy. That's the tension we're going to unpack today.
So, to really get why this paradox exists, we actually need to rewind the clock a little. We got to see how our whole relationship with work and technology got to where it is today.
This timeline tells a pretty fascinating story. It all kicks off back in the 1930s with these studies called the Hawthorne experiments. And what they found was wild for the time. Just by paying attention to workers, treating them like actual people, productivity went through the roof. But then, for decades, it was like that lesson was totally forgotten. Management became obsessed with making everything rigid, optimized, like a machine. It wasn't until the late 20th century, with the rise of the knowledge economy, that we remembered, oh, right, human creativity, that's kind of irreplaceable. And that brings us to today, trying to nail that perfect balance.
And that's really the heart of it. The big challenge isn't just about automating tasks to get rid of them. It's about building systems that act like power-ups for the human brain. Tools that amplify what we're already good at.
So how do we actually pull this off? Well, it comes down to a really big shift in how we think about design itself. Let's look at two key ideas that put people right back in the driver's seat.
First up, we've got something called user-centered design, or UCD. Now, it sounds simple, but it's actually revolutionary. Instead of just building some new piece of tech and forcing people to figure it out, UCD flips the script. It starts by asking, how do you actually work? What do you need? What drives you crazy? And then it builds the technology around those answers.
And the second huge idea is human-AI collaboration. This is a major leap. We're moving away from seeing AI as just a tool, like a hammer or a spreadsheet. Instead, this approach frames AI as a partner, a collaborator. It's not about a master and a tool. It's about a team working together to do something that neither could possibly do alone.
And this chart just perfectly illustrates why that partnership is so incredibly powerful. Look at the human side: creativity, empathy, solving messy, complex problems. Then you've got the AI, incredible speed, processing mountains of data, and spotting patterns we'd never see. You put those together and you get the absolute best of both worlds. It's like a dream team.
Okay, so that all sounds great in theory, but what does this actually look like out in the real world? Let's dig into how this human-centered approach really plays out. The benefits are just crystal clear. Decisions get way smarter because they're backed by massive amounts of data, but guided by actual human judgment. People become way more productive because all the boring, repetitive stuff gets automated, freeing them up to focus on strategy and creativity. And, maybe most importantly, when people feel empowered by tech instead of threatened by it, job satisfaction just skyrockets. But look, it's not a perfectly smooth ride. We have to be really careful about some of the challenges. Things like the stress and burnout that can come with new tech, or the really sneaky danger of automation bias. That's where we start to just blindly trust whatever the algorithm says. And of course, getting a whole company to change how it works, well, that's always a tough one.
Okay, to see how this works in practice, let's look at a case study where the stakes are incredibly high. In law enforcement, some agencies are using what's called quasi-automation. That's basically where an algorithm helps guide a human decision but doesn't make the decision on its own. So, check out the HEART algorithm. Here's how it works. An officer puts in all the data on a case. Then, the AI crunches the numbers and assesses the risk level, low, medium, or high. But, and this is the most important part, the final step is the human officer. They take that recommendation and they make the final call. The AI gives a suggestion, not a command.
But this is exactly where that automation bias we just talked about can become a huge problem. Because even when the officers technically have the final say, there's this really strong pull to just go with what the machine says. And that can lead to people switching off their own critical thinking, their own situational awareness, the very skills the system was supposed to be supporting in the first place.
And we see this exact same dynamic playing out in healthcare, another field where you just can't get it wrong. AI is getting unbelievably good at spotting tiny, almost invisible patterns in medical scans, flagging problems way earlier than a human eye ever could. But the AI doesn't know the patient's story. It's the doctor who brings the context, who understands the patient's history, and who ultimately makes the diagnosis.
Again, it's a powerful assistant, not the final word.
So, let's pull all this together. What does this mean for the future of our jobs, our companies, and just work in general?
We're seeing 4 huge trends shaping what's next. We're moving toward intelligent systems that are always learning and getting better. We're designing for that human-AI teamwork right from the beginning. We're even changing how we measure success. It's not just about speed anymore, it's about how good that human-machine partnership is. And entire ways of doing business, like DevOps and AOps, are being built around this new reality.
So, if there's one big thing to take away from all of this, it's that the real goal of automation isn't about replacing people. It's about creating these amazing collaborative environments that let us do what we do best: to think, to create, to connect, and to solve problems.
And that really leaves us with the ultimate question, doesn't it? As we keep building this more and more automated world, it's on all of us to make sure we're designing a future where technology actually serves us and makes us more human, not less. Thanks for watching.